Sometimes the best way to really understand history, to really feel it, is to just listen to a single voice that actually lived through it. And today, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're stepping back to the year 1881 to hear the story of one man's absolutely incredible life, told in his own words. 85 winters. Just let that sink in for a minute. This isn't just some line from a dry history book. This is a real man, sitting in his son's parlor, looking at his grandchildren, and getting ready to tell them the story of a world that was born, fought for, and completely transformed, all within his own lifetime. So our narrator is a man named Abraham Kemp. The year is 1881, and we're in Windham Township, Ontario. He's 85 years old and is looking back on his life, telling his story to his grandkids. This guy is a direct link to the 18th century. He is a living, breathing witness to the birth of Canada as a nation.
85. Let's just pause on that number. He was born in 1795, when King George III was on the throne of England. And he would live long enough to see the dawn of the industrial age, with railroads crisscrossing the very same land that he once helped clear with his own two hands.
Okay, so his story starts in a place called Fredericksburg, in what was then called Upper Canada. He was the eldest of 9 kids, and let me tell you, his youth was not about school and playing games. No way. It was all about survival, about building a life completely from scratch in the huge Canadian wilderness. We have this kind of romantic idea of pioneer life, right? Well, this list right here, it just boils it down to the raw, physical reality. This was his day-to-day, from the moment he was strong enough to lift an axe. Life was all about relentless, hard work, a huge family, and this deep, powerful faith that basically held the whole thing together. And then, in 1812, everything changed for Abraham. War broke out with the Americans. And at just 16 years old, this kid who had only ever known life on the farm was about to become a soldier. For 3 years, he served as a private. But you gotta understand, he wasn't fighting in some foreign land for a cause he barely understood. No, he was defending his own home, his family's farm, from invasion. He literally walked into that war as a boy and walked out of it a veteran. He apparently rarely spoke about these years, but man, you can just feel the weight of it all in these words. This wasn't some abstract conflict for him. It was visceral, it was terrifying, and it clearly left a mark on him that never went away.
So what was his reward for all this? $20 and land. But that land was everything. It wasn't just a payment. It was the seed from which his entire future, his farm, his family, his whole legacy was going to grow.
Okay, so with the war behind him, Abraham started the next big chapter. In 1818, he married a woman named Sarah Fletcher, and together they started building the one thing that would truly define the rest of his life: their family. 11. They had 11 children. In a time that was full of hardship and uncertainty, they just filled their home with life. He said each one was a blessing, another mouth to feed, another soul to raise in righteousness. But, with great love also comes the risk of great loss. Their son Charles died before he even turned 7. So Abraham's life wasn't just about triumph. It was also shaped by this deep, profound sorrow that he carried with him for more than 30 years. And after his beloved Sarah passed away, Abraham found himself a widower, with young kids to raise. He did eventually get married again, to a widow named Saphrona. He said it wasn't the same kind of passionate love he had in his youth, but it was a different kind of bond, a companionship that was really built on understanding and sharing that experience of grief. But here's the thing about Abraham. His life was never static. He was never one to just sit still. To provide for that huge growing family, he was always on the move, just like so many people of his generation, constantly looking for better soil, a better opportunity, a better future. Just look at this map of his life. It's pretty incredible. He starts with his land grants, then moves across Ontario. And then, in his 70s, an age where most people are more than ready to settle down, he moves to Saginaw, Michigan. And then, finally, he comes back to Canada to live out his final days with his sons. The man was just never afraid to start over. And here's a small detail I just love from his time in the States. The census taker, who was probably confused by his Canadian accent and his wife's French name, just wrote their names down as Camp. It's this tiny, humanizing little reminder of what it feels like to be a stranger in a new place. So, this all brings us back to where we started, 1881. Abraham is surrounded by his grandchildren, and he's basically boiling down 85 years of struggle, joy, and unbelievable change into a final set of lessons. This is the kind of wisdom that's earned the hard way. Seriously, just think about the scale of change he personally witnessed. He was born into a world of scattered colonies that were all connected by water and horsepower. He lived to see the Confederation of Canada, the rise of big cities like Toronto, and a landscape that was totally reshaped by the railroad. And these were the core truths he wanted to pass on. They're simple, but they're so powerful, right? Each and every one of them is a direct reflection of the life he lived. The backbreaking work on the frontier, the fighting for his home during the war, the devastating losses he endured, and that just unwavering resilience that got him through it all. And in the end, that's what it was all about. His real legacy wasn't going to be money or property. It was his story. It was a good name, a history of survival and integrity, and the powerful bond of family that he had spent more than 60 years building and taking care of. Abraham Kemp's memories, his entire life story, they were preserved on the pages of a family Bible, passed down from one generation to the next. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? In our digital age of fleeting social media posts and forgotten files in the cloud, how are we going to preserve our own stories for the future? What's going to be our Bible?